Hey, it's Pete Mundo. Before the podcast starts, could you do us a favor at KCMO? We don't ask you for much outside of supporting our sponsors and advertisers. Could you leave us a 5-star rating and review? Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Helps us a lot. We so appreciate you doing that. These guys and gals in Kansas got to be kidding me with this. I mean, you can't be serious. The consideration of an earnings tax for Wyandotte County is apparently on the table. And it's amazing. I reached out to at least half a dozen lawmakers on the Kansas side of the state line, and many of them were not aware of it, scoffed at it, said it was a joke. They saw who introduced it, which is a Democrat out in KCK, and they said it's probably a dumb idea. And they made it seem like it's got no chance of happening. But also, I got a lot of the cold shoulder on this issue. And this comes, of course, with the background of the Kansas City Chiefs and or the Royals considering a move to the Kansas side of the state line. It's 6:05. It's great to be here on KCMO on a Thursday morning. But the reality and the takeaway for me in just talking to a couple of people yesterday, exchanging notes, reaching out, this is nowhere close to being something that, like, the legislature is considering a priority and is going to happen in order to drag one of these two teams across the state line. And let me just add this as well. It would be an incredibly bad idea to try to lure the teams while putting a tax like this on the table for Wyandotte County voters. This is an awful idea for so many reasons because it takes away one of the main incentives of leaving Jackson County right now. The 1% earnings tax.
I was thinking I didn't get it because I haven't hit the Dr. Pepper yet.
No.
You.
No, John, you don't need that gallon of Dr. Pepper that you drink to come to this very obvious conclusion.
At least for this, anyway.
Yeah, at least for this. Good point. All you need to do is realize that one of the appealing parts of looking at Kansas is getting rid of the earnings tax for your players and your employees that currently work out of the Truman Sports Complex and pay the earnings tax. You don't go to Kansas and then have Kansas be like, yeah, we're going to have one of those too, and piss off your hundreds of thousands of residents that you currently have in Wyandotte County, who now are going to be a percentage less wealthy because you guys got to put in an earnings tax to try to make the math work. Here's what this is coming down to. The math isn't working on the Kansas side of the state line for these stadiums, which is why they've got to get creative. They've got to get some of the local counties and municipalities involved here. And that's what I'm hearing more and more of over the last week or so. The Kansas Star bonds alone do not and will not generate enough money to build the stadiums to then solely pay off and pay back the bonds. The money won't be there, which is why they've got to incorporate either Wyandotte in some way, shape, or form, KCK, the unified government, in Johnson County. We talked to Johnson County Chairman Mike Kelly about this the other day. He was very coy, but I know there have been some informal, at the very least, conversations there. And then, of course, there's elements of municipalities in Overland Park potentially getting involved, or municipalities in Johnson County, like Overland Park, potentially getting involved in all this. So that's where the money has to come from because these Star bonds just aren't going to generate enough. And that's where the rubber's meeting in the road. And that's why I believe, as Patrick Toohey and I talked about yesterday, the teams have not just run into Kansas's arms. If it was as great a deal as some people have insisted it is in the Kansas legislature, they'd be gone by now. If it was this can't-miss opportunity, they would have been like, you know what? After April and that vote went down in flames, we're out. Oftentimes, it's telling what people don't do, right? It tells the story just as much as anything when they don't do something as it is when they do something. And that's what we're seeing play out right now with this state of Kansas Royals Chiefs deal. Now, yesterday down in Jeff City, there was a big meeting that took place between House leadership in Missouri, Senate leadership in Missouri. You had a couple of folks from the Jackson County legislature. You had the governor. It was a very high-level meeting. There were a member or two of the Kansas City, Missouri City Council. Mayor Lucas was not there. He was not invited to be there, as I understand it. It's not like he couldn't make it. He was not invited to be a part of this meeting. So with that, they apparently were trying to figure out what their next move is. And the legislature does believe that it can figure out a way to put together a deal that is appealing to the Chiefs. Notice what I said there. The Chiefs. The Royals, I can tell you from people inside the meeting, were an afterthought, if they were a thought at all. There was this general attitude around the Royals of no one knows what they want. They're not being communicative with us. They're not being transparent with us. Yesterday's meeting in Jeff City, the highlight, the headline, is that the Royals weren't even really part of the conversation. The conversation heavily centered on the Kansas City Chiefs and what the state can potentially do for the Kansas City Chiefs and how the state might be able to help the Kansas City Chiefs stay where they're at and stay in Missouri, which is how I have felt this was going to play out all along. They would stay where they're at. They would hang tight. It might take longer than anybody expected, but that the state would ultimately come to the table with some kind of a deal. Does that mean direct taxpayer dollars? That I'm not clear on yet. Is it some type of economic development super TIF type of situation? Probably. Similar to a star bond, but not exactly a star bond on the Kansas side of the state line. Those were the conversations that were being had yesterday. It was not in the weeds. It was more of a high level, broad picture. What can we do? We want to make sure the Chiefs are happy and stay where they're at. And everybody came out of that meeting, as I understand it, talking to people in the meeting, pretty optimistic on the ability to keep the Kansas City Chiefs. But it's amazing to think that the Royals were kind of like oh yeah, those guys. And this is where the Royals, I think, have made massive mistakes along the way. No one knows what they want, and it's starting to annoy people. It's starting to annoy people because the Royals clearly need the help of those in local and state government on both sides of the state line, and no one really knows what it is they're looking for, and people are throwing their hands up saying, guys, we want to help you, but we can't help you help yourself here.
And it annoys me because I want to blame Frank White.
Yeah, well, we all do.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's not the case, apparently.
Well, no.
Maybe.
It's not like they're going to everybody around Frank White and saying, here's what we want, but Frank's in the way. Like, no one has really had a good conversation with him in a very long time. So trust me, I'm not looking to sit here and give Frank White any excuses. But I will say this deal right now, it's not getting done because of Frank White. Now, certainly he has not helped the cause at all. He's not doing his job and reaching out. But at the same time, as Patrick Tuohy noted yesterday on the show, it is kind of their job to be the ones who are the aggressors here. They're the ones who are looking for something from the taxpayer. So it's kind of on them to say, hey, here's where we're thinking, here's where we're at, here's what we'd like to do. Like, that's kind of on them because they're the ones who are looking to partner with the taxpayer on this. And no one down in Jeff City really has any idea what it is they're looking for right now. 913-408-7957. It's 613. You know that you got it here first on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. We're always streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. And just as you wake up, you tell that Alexa, you tell that Google Home to play KCMO Talk Radio and take us with you throughout the morning. Coming up next on KCMO Talk Radio, the relationship between Donald Trump and Elon Musk. What is it exactly? Is it what the media is making it out to be, or is it something completely different? I'll answer it coming up on 95.7 FM. So Trump holds his first cabinet meeting yesterday, and you probably saw some highlights and some clips from it. Great memes are coming out of it, like many of the Donald Trump meetings tend to have. And I love watching them. They're like watching reality TV, except you're getting a look into the president of the United States, not a bunch of nobodies who are just trying to become famous on Instagram. So that's what I like about him. And Trump kind of holds, this roundtable event. He's got all his cabinet secretaries sitting next to him. And Elon Musk is there. So, of course, the media's job is to try to drive a wedge between Donald Trump and Elon Musk. The calculated play here is that eventually they can make Trump feel threatened by Elon, because Elon is the richest man in the world. If there's anything that Donald Trump might be intimidated by, it's someone who's a billionaire many more times over than he is. And they figure if they can keep beating this drum, it's really President Elon, that they can eventually get Trump to bite. I don't get the sense it's happening here. I don't. And there was this clip yesterday that stood out to me that a lot of people were jumping on when Trump deferred to Elon on a couple of questions from the media. And here's what Elon had to say.
And what is your target number for how many workers, employees you're looking to cut total?
We wish to keep everyone who is doing a job that is essential and doing that job well. But if the job is not essential or they're not doing the job well, they obviously should not be on the public payroll.
So people were looking at that moment and they said, look at Trump. He has now given up his cabinet meeting to Elon Musk. Oh,
how dare you?
He can't do that. What is he thinking? The unelected president of the United States, Elon Musk, is now running cabinet meetings. Oh! Let's calm down here for a second. You know what I see going on? I see Trump maybe more comfortable than ever in his skin, to the point where he's like, sure, Elon, you want to answer a question? Trump is actually so confident in his relationship with Elon Musk and his standing with the American people that he is not buying the narrative that the media is trying to sell the American people. Because one, he knows they won't buy it. And two, he's actually confident in his relationship with Elon. Now, I'm not sitting here convinced that the relationship is going to end all hunky-dory. I'm not saying that. There may be a point where Trump says, you know what, I've had enough of this guy. I mean, that's entirely possible. History would suggest you're fired. At some point, that may come to fruition. I'm not going to deny that. But I also look at this like you would look at a relationship between a boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife. Those who are most confident in their relationships do not have any problem with their spouse going on a boys' trip or going on a girls' trip. You are confident in your relationship. You feel like that person has nothing to hide from you. And you're like, yeah, sure, go have a good time. Oftentimes, it's those who are most jealous. It's those who are least confident in their relationship standings. When they're like, oh, I got to go with you. No, you can't go. Nope, I don't trust you to be out on your own. I don't trust you to go out with the boys or go out with the girls because deep down you don't really have confidence in your relationship. I think right now I see Trump having so much confidence in the relationship with Elon Musk that he's like, yeah, sure, Elon. I mean, you're playing a big role right now with Doge, so coming into the cabinet meeting and talk to the media, answer a few questions. Because and I know that if Elon was not in that meeting, what would the narrative be? The narrative would be, where's Elon? Elon's the man behind the curtain. Elon can't even show up to the meeting as he's running Doge, which is what everybody in America is talking about.
Hey, where's the elephant in the room?
Yes, that's what they would do. So he's damned if he does, he's damned if he doesn't. Either way, Elon's there, and they say, oh, there's the co-president just sitting in on a cabinet meeting. If Elon's not there, it's, where is he? Who's he firing now? What is he doing? Whose life is he ruining now in the federal government? So it doesn't matter. And the fact that Trump isn't taking some of this bait is actually a growth thing out of Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. That's how I'm seeing this. This
Very
is
Reagan-esque,
Yes, this is a guy who is no longer just taking the bait. He's kind of treating the media like he should have treated them for the first 4 years of his term from 2017 to 2021, which is like, yes, answer the questions, but don't let them ruin your day. You know, we've all got that colleague at the office who, if you are in a bad mood, you'll let that guy or gal ruin your day. And you can't. You can't let them ruin your day. You can't let your mood be determined by somebody who really has no control over your life, theoretically, and in the end, isn't that big of a deal. They're kind of like a fly or just a gnat that's kind of in the way. That's how Trump's got to treat the media in large part. And I don't mean that from a disrespectful standpoint. I mean, you understand what they're going to do. You understand what their job is. You understand how each network and how each reporter is going to operate. But in the end, you have the confidence in your convictions to do what you think needs to be done on behalf of the American people. That's it. And I actually think we've seen growth from him on that front. Instead of falling for every media trap, which he did way too much of in his first term, he fell for it. And he may never admit that, but I mean, you and I both know he fell for way too many of them. Now he's just like, hey, here's the transparent cabinet meeting I'm going to have. You know, Elon, you want to say a few words? Who are we going to fire today? Who are we going to hire? And what's the plan here? And Elon says something that I think most people in the private sector can connect with. You're right now drinking your coffee. Maybe you're about to get in the car. You're listening on Alexa. You're listening on the KCMO Talk Radio app. Maybe you're in the car right now driving to work drinking that coffee. And Elon Musk says, hey, yeah, we're just trying to weed out the fat. We're trying to keep good people employed and get rid of the bad ones. You may be going to work right now having to let go of somebody today. That might be you. That might be your job today. And while it pains you as a human being, you know it's the right move for the organization. Because this is how private sector employees have been working since the beginning of time. And this is now an approach that's being taken by the federal government. Is it going to be perfect? No, it never is. How many layoffs have you been a part of? I mean, I don't mean you getting laid off, but how many layoffs have you seen where you say, you know what? That probably wasn't the right guy or gal. I could have thought of somebody better to let go, but I understand why they did it. We've all seen that. It's not unique to the federal government. But there's going to be a push to make potentially every person or persons who get laid off the most valuable, important figures who have ever existed in our bureaucracies. And you and I both know that's not the case. Come on now, it's not. 913-408-7957. That's our text line and our studio line here on KCMO Talk Radio. The 6 at 6 is coming up in 15 minutes, and something tragic happened in Lenexa we'll tell you about next. Well, Johnson County may not have started the fire, but they are reaping what they sow when it comes to bad public policy on both sides of our state line. Good morning, 634. It's great to be here on 95.7 FM. So yesterday, we told you about these two incidents that were about 10 minutes apart in Kansas and totally unrelated. And one was a shooting in Prairie Village at about 8:30 at night at 75th and State Line Road, give or take. And the other one, we now know, was an armed robbery of a vehicle at a Quick Trip at Shawnee Mission Parkway and Metcalf. So I'll update you on those here coming up in a minute. But you also had this yesterday in Lenexa. Lenexa Police Department on the scene of a shooting Wednesday afternoon that left one person dead. A shooting reported after 4 p.m. apartment complex in the area of 76th and Halsley Street off Quivira Road. It started off as a medical call. The police say that they located a man in the parking lot of the complex with what officers said appeared to be a gunshot wound to the head. The man was transported to an area hospital. One person is dead. Another victim has been taken by ambulance to a hospital per the Lenexa police. So you've got the shooting in the middle of the day at a Lenexa apartment complex. You've got an armed carjacking, not late at night, early evening, at 75th and Metcalf at the Quick Trip. You've got shots fired and somebody attempting to carjack a vehicle at a stoplight in Prairie Village at 75th and State Line. And these things all happened within 18 hours of each other, more or less. This is horrible news for Johnson County, but the media is more or less trying to bury it, sweep it under the rug, and act like, oh, yeah, I mean, stuff happens, not ideal, too bad, we'll all just move on. It's like, hold on a second here. Now, let's just pump the brakes here for a second. With all due respect, this is why people want to live in Prairie Village. This is why they want to live in some of the nicer parts of Overland Park. This is why they want to live in parts of Lenexa. And instead, they're getting all this riffraff.
Something's going wrong at 75th Street, it seems like.
Well, yes, it seems like that has become a bad corridor. I will say, though, when we were out there for the Back the Blue tour in Prairie Village with former police chief Byron Roberson, who is now the Johnson County Sheriff, he didn't know, 75th Street does get a little more action than you might think with people passing through, trying to do or having just done bad things. You're right there on State Line Road, and listen, people are either trying to get to where they're going or get home after doing something bad. But these are the things that are starting to pop up around Johnson County that leadership in Johnson County and the municipalities within Johnson County are turning a total blind eye to. All they're focused on is how they can put up the latest, newest apartment complex when we all know the old saying, market rate turns into Section 8 real fast. We've all heard it. We've all seen it firsthand. And and I know that sadly that's going to be the case in far too many instances. Market rate to Section 8 can happen overnight. Because as long as you're building new apartment complexes, guess what? The new shiny one is always going to be the best. And eventually, the new shiny one is old. If it's not kept up well, it goes downhill very quickly. And then all of a sudden, a lot of people who move to certain parts of town for various reasons no longer have the benefit of being in that part of town. All of a sudden, they're dealing with some of these things that, they thought they wouldn't have to deal with when they lived in that part of town. And what's the answer from your leadership on the Kansas side, in Johnson County in particular? Let's do more of this. Let's do as much of this as we possibly can, which is not what anybody wants at all. But it's what you're getting now. 913-408-7957. Let's go to KCMO. That's where Mike is on a Thursday. What's up, Mike? Good morning.
So is 75th Street the new truce now?
Yeah. I'm not sure we can go that far, but, I guess we're only a few crimes away today from that happening.
Yeah, I'm being facetious. I grew up east of Troost, and, Troost was just the line that the white people and the suburban people would talk about, the crime is. There was as much crime 2 or 3 blocks west of Troost as east of Troost. Mm-hmm. But, I grew up with the idea that there was this imaginary line, and, it was, flower child utopia west of Troost, and east of Troost was Beirut. So I'm being facetious about it, but, there are pockets of crime all over Johnson County. Remember the lady got shot in Ridgeview in the middle of the day, in Olathe, over in Roland Park, robberies and things like that. It's all over, but I agree with you. They're just trying to keep it down, make sure that, people still want to go buy houses out in the suburbs.
Yeah, well, as long as they've got a situation where they can say, hey, Overland Park is being called a top 5 place to live in America. You can't be bringing attention to armed carjackings at a Quick Trip on 75th and Metcalf at 8:30 p.m. You can't have that, right? So that's how this ends up happening. That's how you end up in a situation where things like this are and should be getting attention. I'm not saying you go to Quick Trip today and you should be afraid of it, but I'm just saying these communities don't acknowledge the problems that they have, and as a result, the problems are only going to get worse. Fenny's in Overland Park. Go ahead, Fenny. You're on KCMO.
Hey there, Pete. Good to hear you. Hey, people are migrating. The criminals are migrating over to where the people are purchasing or living in these higher price areas. They're the least to check their area around them.
Yes.
And they're the ones that want to take your guns.
Yes, naivete is definitely part of it, Fenny. That's a good point. And listen, I have said for 5 years now, since we went soft on crime during COVID, it will impact communities outside of Jackson County, outside of Kansas City, Missouri proper. It will. It might take time, but it will happen. And you're seeing it happen. I rarely get jazzed about interviews on cable news because they're all mundane. They're all the same. It's just the same old nonsense time and time again. But I heard something last night, and it came from somebody I would have never expected. It's kind of like you're watching a baseball game, watching the Royals, since that's a hot topic, and your 8th place hitter hits the go-ahead grand slam in the top of the 9th. And you're like, whoa, didn't see that one coming. Your 6th reliever strikes out the side with the bases loaded, up by 1 run. That's what I saw last night from Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, and I didn't see it coming. Like, he's fine. He's serviceable. I don't really have a strong opinion on him either way. I mean, someone had to do the job after the whole Kevin McCarthy thing a couple of years back. Remember, he was like the 4th option. And he's been fine. I don't have a strong opinion either way. But last night, he's on Caitlin Collins' show. He's talking about this budget deal, how it's going down, how they've got to make cuts, $2 trillion in cuts over 10 years. Not a ton of money when you think about it. That's what, $200 billion a year? I mean, we got a $2 trillion annual deficit. I'm not going to do cartwheels over $200 billion a yield, but it's a step in the right direction. All right? That's definitely a step in the right direction. And he was asked about Medicaid cuts. That's become the big boogeyman in the room. Oh, man, Medicaid's getting cut. Oh, boy, these Republicans are going to cut Medicaid. It's like, wait, hang on a second here. Cutting Medicaid is not even in the bill. And Mike Johnson answered this to perfection, and there's a larger cultural conversation that needs to be had here.
I challenge you or anybody on your staff, do a word search for Medicaid on the resolution that we passed last night. You will not find it. That is not part of this equation, okay? We're talking about finding efficiencies in every program, but not cutting benefits for people who rightly deserve that. Work requirements for Medicaid. That is something that is public opinion polls almost 90%. You don't want able-bodied workers on a program that is intended, for example, for single mothers with 2 small children who's just trying to make it. That's what Medicaid is for, not for 29-year-old males sitting on their couches playing video games. We're going to find those guys, and we're going to send them back to work. That's what everybody supports. That's what the Republicans are for. And by the way, we find dignity in our work. That's going to be good for everybody.
Yeah, he just missed the part of describing that 29-year-old male as, eating Cheetos and smoking pot and watching porn and doing all that stuff, too. I mean, that's the problem that we've got. You've got 7 million able-bodied men who are out of the workforce. Now, how many of them are on Medicaid? I don't know. I don't have that answer. But you do know that you've got people abusing this. And it was important for Mike Johnson to say there, hey, this is not about the single mom in Kansas City trying to raise 2 kids, working a couple jobs, who does need help. Listen, we do need social safety nets. We have them. We're the richest country in the world. We should have them. There's a purpose for them. But there's also a lot of abuse out there. There's also a lot of waste out there. And if you have a movement to get able-bodied men in particular, but really just able-bodied adults in general, who don't have any children, no dependents, who just need to get into the workforce, that actually does help in a lot of ways. It reduces government spending. It gets people into the private sector. That helps with inflation when it comes to the labor markets. So there's a win-win-win to be had here for everybody. And most importantly, it gives people purpose. Work gives people purpose. It gives people meaning. It's a means to an end. And we have a crisis of young men in particular in this country. We've talked about it with many of our guests. It's been highlighted on many shows around media. But I think we have a major crisis of young men in America today. And it bears out with some of these numbers when you've got 7 million of them right now in America. American citizens, able-bodied men, not in the workforce. Like, what are you doing? And yes, some of them may be working through some issues, and that happens in life, of course. We understand that. But when you're out of the workforce, that means you're not even looking for a job. That means it's been about 6 months, I think, is the official data point that it takes to be not looking for a job to be officially counted as out of the workforce. That's a crisis. Now, how we got here, that's a separate conversation. when it comes to, I think, the reduction in appreciation of men at the expense of saying, rah, rah, girl power. Girl power is important. I've got 3 daughters, 6 and under. It never needed to be at the expense of young men. It should have been rah, rah, girl power, and yes, rah, rah, boy power. Instead, it became this either or, and it never should have been that way. I've talked to so many teachers who have been in the classroom for 30 years, and they said it's amazing how now the best students overwhelmingly in the classroom are girls. And the boys are just the ones who are always goofing off. Now, boys have always been goofing off in the classroom. All right? I might have done it once or twice. Never more than that. Once or twice. I might have done it back in the day. Mark was a permanent goof. John, I don't even want to know about John. That was pre-technology, so there's no evidence that John was a goofball, but I guarantee you he was. But it would be nice if there was like 50-50, 60-40, but that's not the case anymore. And that's just an anecdotal example, but it's one I've heard from many teachers, and I'm talking about teachers here in Kansas City and also teachers, back east where I worked for several years. So this is a problem that needs to be fixed. And can the government fix it overnight? No, they can't. They can't, but this is a step in the right direction. And it's important for guys like Mike Johnson to come out and say, listen, this is not about the single mother with 2 kids. We're not taking away her Medicaid. Stop with the narrative. Stop with the BS. But if you're a 29-year-old able-bodied male sitting on the couch, eating Cheetos, playing video games, watching porn, time to get a life, time to get a job. And that is a message that should resonate, by the way, and will resonate across the political aisle. Tammy and Shawnee, go ahead. You're on KCMO, Tammy.
Good morning, Pete. You played good cop. Now I'm going to play bad cop. I think that we need to take a tougher line with this. As taxpayers, it's our job to pay for mothers that need assistance, children that have handicaps, adults that have handicaps. It's our job to pay for our senior citizens and help them. It's our job to pay for our veterans who have fought for the freedoms that we enjoy today. But other than that, those other people need to get off the gravy train and get a job. It's over. Get busy. Get to work. That's what I would tell them.
Well, how is that any different than what I just said?
You said it really nice.
Oh, okay. I'm just making sure that we're on the same page. I thought you had a bone to pick with me, but you're just
no.
Okay. You're echoing the sentiments.
Not at all. We're both going at it for the same goal, but I'm going at it down and dirty, I guess. And you're being a nice guy. And I'm like, I'm done with nice guy. Cut them off at the knees. Quit sending them the checks. They're done.
Cut them off somewhere else, Tammy, right? It's time to get back to work. Let's go.
And, here's another thing to think about. How many times have you been to a restaurant and you have difficulty getting a table, or you wait a long time for your food, or you stand in line forever at the grocery store? Why? Because they have help wanted signs in all those places because no one wants to work.
Mm-hmm.
Why should they? There's no motivation to work because they're getting a free ride.
Yep.
Free ride's over.
Free ride's over. That's a good drop, Tammy. Hey, have a great day. Well done. Thank you very much. Tammy in Shawnee on KCMO. Paul in Kansas City. Let it rip. Go ahead, Paul.
Hey, Pete, also in line with your story with Mike Johnson yesterday, Channel 9 News last night did this story on this ALS victims, tragic as it is, saying that President Trump's budget is going to take away this clinical research medicine. They didn't say that it will. It said that it might. Just a horrific, ghoulish story, in my opinion, that you're taking Trump and this budget they passed and putting it with this ALS victim that she's going to be denied the treatment she needs. Just terrible.
Oh, did Channel 9 really do that? I'm looking. I see the story here. ALS patient fears NIH funding cuts could end life-saving treatment. I mean, this is the kind of crap they do, right? Like, the minute you say, hey, we've got to shrink the government, all of a sudden it's, well, the worst thing that could possibly be cut might be cut, therefore we can't cut anything. That's the blueprint.
Exactly.
I just didn't think that. I mean, Channel 9's got great people there. What are they doing with that crap? It's ridiculous.
That's a disservice to the Kansas City people, the American people, of fear-mongering. To bring this poor lady out like that, and they're looping it last night, they looped it again today. So it's just despicable.
Wow. That's like, you got a household budget, you got to cut by $1,000 a month, to use the analogy. And your spouse doesn't want to stop spending, and says, well, what are we going to do? We're going to go hungry. We can't pay our mortgage. It's like, no, we're going to downgrade the car. We're going to stop going out to eat. We're going to stop buying clothes. No vacation for a few months. We're still going to be able to pay our basic expenses. We're still going to pay the mortgage. We're just going to have to, downgrade on some of the luxuries in life. That's what we're going to have to do. And that's what we're asking the government to do. But instead, you get nonsense like this from the media of, Medicaid's getting cut for the single mama, too.
Grandma over the cliff.
Yeah, send grandma
you
over
like
the cliff.
That phrase, but it was good enough for Thelma and Louise. So.
913-408-7957. Wes and Gladstone, what's up, my man?
Well, all I can say is buckle up, Grandma, because you're in for a bumpy ride. But, hey, the reason I called is because back to what Speaker Johnson said, the definition of someone who's disabled has been lowered to such a standard, that's such a low bar, that there's a lot of people that are disabled that are able-bodied people that, are just taking a check. And I think COVID started it. Hey, I can get paid just to sit at home. Oh, I'm overweight, so I'm disabled. Oh, hey, I got a bad back, so I'm disabled. That's what needs to be looked into is the standard to call yourself disabled has been lowered so much that you've got 7 million able-bodied men who don't want to go to work and who are being paid not to work. That's what they need to look into. DOGE needs to look into these people and say, okay, exactly why are you disabled, and start cleaning that mess up.
Yep. Yeah, you're working too hard, Wes. Take it easy today, my man.
Thanks.
All right, there you go. 913-408-7957. I didn't think about that angle. That's a great point. I'm glad that he brought it up. And this is, this is a nuanced conversation that we can have on KCMO that can be smart, insightful, thoughtful, and also caring at the same time. We can check all those boxes. Television media, many on cable news. I mean, forget the Star. If I read the Star today, I'm going to have to go to the heart doctor, so I'm going to skip that one on this Thursday. But all they want to do is fearmonger around this. Guys, it's unsustainable. It's got to end. Okay? And there's popularity and public polling that suggests this is all very popular with the American people. Work requirements are popular for able-bodied citizens with the American people. So they've just got to keep going full steam ahead and ignore all the nonsense, whether it's local here in Kansas City or, of course, the national stuff coming out of some of these news departments. What's this? Breaking news, ABC. Katy Perry is scheduled to blast off on the next... Oh, boy. Katy Perry is scheduled to blast off on the next launch of Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin rocket. Katy Perry blasting off of Jeff Bezos' rocket was not something I had on the bingo card this morning, but you know what?
That sounds like something that comes when you subscribe at the $39.95 level, I think.
Jeez. Oh, my goodness. Okay. Well, good job. Katy Perry's going to space. Just what we all needed.
With Bezos' wife, though.
Yeah, with Bezos' wife. Boy, that could really be a subscription service.
Pay-per-view?
Yeah. Okay.
He did kiss a girl once.
Yeah, that's right. I'll stop there. Good point. All right. Amanda is in Overland Park talking about Medicaid, the fear-mongering going on, local news, national news. Good morning, Amanda. You're on KCMO. What's happening?
Hi. So I kind of converted during the election, thanks to my husband opening my eyes, just, okay, yeah, that doesn't make sense. And unfortunately mentioned it to one of my good friends. And now all of a sudden I'm this different person with these, who believes these horrible things, that he's taking food out of the mouths of children, and, these single mothers are going to be affected. And how can you believe this? And it's just ridiculous, because I'm like, I'm still the same person. I have the same values. How is it that you don't believe me and you believe Kamala Harris?
No, you see, now you're a Nazi, Amanda. That's how this works, right? I mean, your friends that know who you are and have known you for years now consider you a Nazi. So, they view you through a totally different lens, and you're now a totally different person. It's like they never knew you.
Yes. And she's, she'll text me little jabs like, oh, well, I just lost my FAFSA. Now I can't go to school. And, oh, now I have to buy a passport to prove that I'm an American citizen. You didn't do anything illegal. You are legal. You have nothing to worry about. I'm sorry, like, with all the money that Trump is going to be saving us, you can go to school, no problem. You'll be able to pick that back up.
Yeah, you'll be just fine.
Ridiculous.
That is, so Amanda, when did you find the show?
During the election. I've been kind of hooked to you guys ever since. And that was one of my things, is because I loved how you guys bring the receipts. You're showing, you are doing videos of, okay, this person said this, and this is how it's going. And I've been doing a lot of research. And then she does something like sending me a clip of Joe Rogan saying something like, oh, well, if this is where you're getting your information. Like, no, actually, I'm not stupid. I'm doing research and seeing with my eyes what's going on.
And so how old are you and your friends, just out of curiosity, Amanda?
Well, I am 31, and she is 24.
Yeah. She's got a little time. I've got hope for her. I think you're going to help her see the light. I'm very optimistic about this friendship and how it's going to pan out. You're hitting a rough patch right now, but she's going to get red-pilled at some point.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so.
Hang in there, Amanda. You're a good person, and we're glad that you found us.
Thanks so much, Pete.
You bet. Have a great day. Thank you very much. That's a great story right there. The other problem, and I'm saying this tongue-in-cheek, that I'm sure some of her friends are saying about Amanda, she listened to her husband. Her husband's got control over her. The man's in charge.
You vote the right way, honey.
Yeah.
How dare you?
It's like those dopey commercials.
Yeah,
remember?
Yes, I do.
Yes, it
you
was
vote
like
the right way, dear.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, I did. Wink, wink. With the old, it's like that's probably how her
fingers crossed.
That's probably how her friends are talking about her behind her back. It's like that. It wasn't a meme. It was that thing we played. Oh gosh, it was like 2 weeks ago. It was a spoof skit, and it was like a conservative telling their liberal friend that they're now conservative, and the liberal's like, "Oh my gosh, I guess you're a Nazi. We can't be friends." And when it's the other way around, it's like, all right, cool. Can we still be friends? It's all good. Whatever. It's unbelievable.